Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the sedras of tazria and metzora, the fourth and fifth sedras in the book of Vayikra that we read this coming Shabbos. And it's also Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. We have the first 2 days of Rosh Chodesh iyar, Friday and Shabbos. The Friday is going to be the 30th day of the month of Nisan, and Shabbos the first day of the month of iyar. And I think that we can really find in the convergence of all of these three, Rosh Chodesh, Tazria and Metzora, on one Shabbos, that we can find this idea of the power and the challenge, the responsibility of potential. And firstly, just having a look at the month of iyar. This month is the one complete month that we will say the Omer, we will count the Omer, and the Omer is the bridge between Pesach and Shavuot, and it's the bridge between us leaving Egypt and supposedly gaining our freedom, but really that freedom is a journey towards Har Sinai, towards accepting Hashem's, the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances, and becoming a nation under God. And so we have some of the month of Nisan, some of the month of Sivan, but Iyar is a month of a complete count. It's the month that we will really have this opportunity to really join the two aims of Pesach and Shavuot. And so during this time, this is a time of heightened potential. It's a time of working to raise our spiritual levels. We have the tradition that the Jewish people, when they were liberated from the land of Egypt, they were on the 49th level of impurity, and they had to climb up to be suitable to reach levels of acceptability to receive the Torah. And so each and every year we are doing that ourselves. We are trying to ascend this ladder, this mountain, to become worthy recipients of the Torah, because it's something that we accept on ourselves on every day, we could say, but certainly on the anniversary of our nation receiving the Torah. And if we look at more recent events in the month of iyar, we'll see that there is a very heavy concentration of uniquely historically significant events. And this fits in with the other name of the month of iyar, which is called Ziv, elsewhere in the Torah, in Tanakh. And Ziv is Aramaic for potential or aura. And if you imagine the light that surrounds any object, the light that emanates from within that object is called aura. And if we see what's happening in the natural world, the blossoms on the trees are almost like this glow of light around the trees. And there's a parallel that's happening in the physical and spiritual worlds. And in this time of spiritual potential, in this time of physical potential, we see the recent calendar events, and this is something that is pointed out by Eliyahu Kitov in his epic work Sefer HaTorah, the Book of Our Heritage, where he goes through the months of the year and he gives us the details, the significance of various practices and various events that happen during the months of the year. And he points out certainly the days that are going to be coming up after Shabbos next week of Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, the Remembrance Day in Israel, Independence Day in Israel, and later on in the month of Iyar, the 28th of the month of Iyar, we have Yom Yerushalayim, the anniversary of the liberation of Yerushalayim in 1967. And Rabbi Kitov points out that, and we can also connect it to Yom HaShoah, which is this week, the before Shabbos on Monday night, Tuesday, and it is a reflection of the reality of the Jewish people in exile, that the events of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, how we are prey, how we are vulnerable to the nations who are actively, if definitely passively, many of the time, and often actively as well, seeking our harm, and with the Holocaust as a horrific example of the potential that the extent to that can reach. And then we turn a corner, as it were, and we have the miraculous establishment of a Jewish land in a Jewish sovereign state in Eretz Yisrael, in the land that was promised to our fathers, to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We have such a, a connection with it that even 80 years ago, people would never have, in their wildest dreams, in the darkest points of the persecution of the Holocaust, imagine that such a miracle would happen. And we see the miracle of the ongoing building of the land, the state of Israel. And while we haven't reached uh, our the destination of our journey, the destination of Moshiach and the rebuilding of the temple, the fact that we have this miracle, that we have this privilege that we cannot take for granted, this merit, this zechus, that in our time we can go to the land of Israel, we can live there, we can go to our holy places. And this really is something that has not been the case through so much of our history. And this is about potential. And I think that if we look at the Sedras of Tazria and Metzora, we see there too that there is an underlying, perhaps common denominator of the potential in in the in the features that are listed in the various uh, maladies that appear in these two sedras, or the sacrifices that are required to be brought. In the sedra of Tazria, it opens with a woman who has just given birth, and how she is obliged to bring an olah, an elevation offering, often called a burnt offering, and also a chatat, a sin offering. And then it carries on to describe various other conditions that require these of the sin offering. And very soon we have, in the rest of the Sedra of Tazria and in the Sedra of Metzora, very much the focus on what is today translated, probably inaccurately, as leprosy. Certainly, it is not the leprosy that we understand today, which is the skin wasting disease, but the concept of tsaras in the Torah is a spiritual malady that came from speaking Lashon Hara, uh, translated as uh, literally the speech of evil. And the word metzora is a contraction, according to the rabbis, of motzi shem ra, which means to bring out a bad name. And this is this is how disunity is spread, how we suffer from terrible consequences when we are spreading this kind of information. And very often people will mistakenly think that in order to be classified as Lashon Hara, something has to be untrue. And that is not true. That even if something is true, it is still considered Lashon Hara if it is something that is derogatory, that is disparaging about another person. And while there are exceptional circumstances when this Lashon Hara may need to be expressed, if, for example, somebody is asking for references for a shidduch, for suggesting a match between two people, or if there is some business venture that's being suggested. And again, this is important information that needs to be shared, that needs to be known, but obviously just to the person who has a direct interest in this material. But the point is, anything derogatory about another person can fall under this heading of Lashon Hara. So very interesting to look at the words of the Rambam Maimonides in Hilchot Tumas Tzaras, the laws of the ritual impurity that is caused by the condition of tzaras. And Rambam writes, tzaras, was a sign and wonder among the Israelites to warn them against slanderous speaking. For if a man uttered slander, the walls of his house would suffer a change. If he repented, the house would again become clean. But if he continued in his wickedness until the house was torn down, leather objects in his house on which he sat or lay would suffer a change. If he repented, they would again become clean. But if he continued in his wickedness until they were burned, the garments which he wore would suffer a change. If he repented, they would again become clean. But if he continued in his wickedness until they were burned, his sin would suffer a change, and he would become infected by tzaras and be set apart and alone until he no more engaged in the conversation of the wicked, which is scoffing and slander. And this progression from outside to inside, from a house, and this is something very unique to tzaras, and again, clearly not as we understand modern day leprosy, is that it can apply to homes, it can apply to brick walls, it can apply to clothes, and it can apply to a person's skin. And so all of these are indications of how it is very possible to have this spiritual malady, to because of the disunity and the bad feelings that are engendered by talking in this way about someone else, up to potentially the most disastrous of consequences. And the another completely unusual consequence or consequences of talking Lashon Hara, which are outlined in the Talmud in Arachin, are that three people are affected negatively by a conversation containing Lashon Hara, and that is the speaker, the listener, and the one about whom it is spoken. And we don't find anything else that can have such a profoundly damaging impact on this wide range of people, that one conversation can do it to this extent. And this is something that we are looking at these portions in the Torah that seem to be describing rituals that don't apply today. So how relevant can they be to us? But when we see that the type of speaking that the laws are targeting are very much relevant today. And we could argue with the advent of technology and ease of communication that previously you would have to have a conversation with people physically present. And then as there were telephones, for example, and now, huge group meetings or posts that can become viral on social media, how the spread is so much harder to control and can reach parts of the world in moments, in a way that previously this could never have happened. And so consequently, the challenge of and the need to really have this absolute filter that will prevent us speaking in this way and causing the terrible damage that can be caused by this kind of speech. And it's often been pointed out that various parts of the body have protection. Part of the miracle of our physiology is that, for example, eyes have got lids to protect them, and also the bone structure of the face, the socket, that the eye is in the socket, and there is a certain amount of protection that can come from the bone, that the sort of the brow bone that is on top of the eye, and similarly various other of our organs will have this protection, and if we look at the we call it lashon hara, but if we see that there are two gates to stop the wagging tongue of lashon hara, and that is the teeth, the sort of the jaws, and the lips as well. And so again, coming back to this idea of potential, that people, the human Adam, man, is considered medaber. That is how a man is described in the various levels of creation. And we are not called man, we're not called Adam, we are called medaber. And with our mouths, we have the potential to speak and create positive feeling, positive relationships with our speech. And when we don't use our gift of speech that characterizes us as human beings in this way, then we unleash untold powers of destruction. And this is something that is so relevant and so pertinent constantly. And so I think that we really can look at all of these themes of the month of Iyar, the special events that happened in our recent history exclusively during the month of Iyar, and how this month stands for potential and the ability to see Hashem's hand in our national life, in our personal life, and to really rise up to that occasion, to really refine ourselves. And it's a work in progress. This is something that we train ourselves, and the more we train ourselves, as with a physical training, then the more it becomes a part of us, and the less of a struggle it is. We establish good habits, and then it is so much easier for us to keep away from these negative behaviors. And in this way, then we can really use the month of Iyar. We can look at the lessons of tazria and metzora and understand them in ways that do apply very specifically to us today. And we are able in this way to continue ascending that ladder as we move towards Matan Torah in this very unique time between Pesach and Shavuot. Thank you very much for listening. Wishing everyone Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov, a good Shabbos and a good month.